Society Matters.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Ken Schachter, and on today's episode of Disrupting Hate on HMTV, I'm joined by our special guest, Bert Brodsky. Bert is a serial entrepreneur, a philanthropist. His work stretches from the beginnings in Bronx High School of Science to CCNY. He has been the chair of the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. He founded BEB Capital, and he also founded Sandata, a health tech company. Welcome, Bert. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ken.
Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. How did you get started in business, and what kind of core values guided you along the path?
Well, my first entrepreneurial experience, I didn't realize I was an entrepreneur when I was 12 years old and collected bottles on the beach. And that was being a businessman, which I always wanted to be. And at 13, I hired a 12-year-old and gave him a penny of the 2 cents I was getting for the bottle. And I washed it out and turned it in. So that was really, I didn't realize that it was an entrepreneurial entree into the world, but it was. My first real business was in 1970 when a cousin of mine in New Jersey was doing billing for doctors. And I wanted to be in business, and he showed me what he was doing in New Jersey, and I started that in Port Washington, New York. And my wife Muriel gave me a great idea. I was thinking of going into the city to start this business, and she pointed out that it's really a telephone and a mail business, and I could be anywhere. So I ended up opening up in Port Washington, above what's now a bagel store, and that began my career. But I took it one step further than my cousin. He just billed the third-party insurance carriers, collected the money, and forwarded on to the physician clients. And the changes I made was, if you read the reimbursement of physician fees, most of the money for healthcare comes from third-party carriers, either Medicare or Medicaid or private insurance. And I realized that if you read the manual and you read the reimbursement, there are ways of increasing the revenue for those physicians. And that really was a beginning for me. I'm an economically driven person. I'm an accountant and finance economist from City College. And finding ways to increase reimbursement for your client was my main job, and I was very successful at it. And when I started to get a little bigger, rather than having the secretaries type the bill for the physician's fee, and then when a payment came in, retype the entire bill showing a partial payment, I went to New York Tech and found a graduate student who was running a computer in their basement, and asked him, was it possible to just keep this information in the computer, and then when the bill came out, not have to retype it each time that a payment came in, but just apply the payment and have the computer send out the bill.
Just to give us a sense of the time frame, around when
1971, 1972.
Okay, so this is just at the very beginning of the computer age.
I will tell you that healthcare is one of the last industries to computerize. And what we did do, which was unique, was we were the first people to ever transmit data electronically for reimbursement for hospital-based doctors. It was always on paper. And we did that by using, at the time, was a company called ICL. It was a British computer company. And we were able to convince Blue Cross Blue Shield, who were the intermediary for Medicare, we were able to convince them to accept a disc with all the information on it. Rather than us print out a hard copy, give it to them, they would enter that hard copy into their computer. They would process it and print out another hard copy, send it to me. I would have to put it in the computer, process it, and send the funds to the physicians. Well, they quickly realized that it was easier just to give them a disc, process, and give me back a disc. We were the first people to do that. That really set my career on its path. And from 1970 to 1977, we did that. We were very successful, as well as opening offices and teaching hospitals and finding ways for the physician to get reimbursed for what you know as grand rounds. They never did get reimbursed for it by the carriers, except there is a section of the law that permits it, but very few people understood it. We did that, and that was a very successful product. That company I sold in 1977, which really set me on a path of being an entrepreneur. So I had funds now.
What was the name of the company?
That company is called Medical Arts Office Services.
Got it.
And then we sold to a very large company called ITEL Corporation, which made the Wall Street Journal, not because of my company. It was because ITEL was going into healthcare for the first time. That's why it made the front page of the Wall Street Journal. But with that funds, I was introduced to a scientist in Downstate Medical Center who had an invention and needed funds to move that invention from the hospital to private industry. And I met with him, and he showed me this machine, which I did not understand at all, that you could look into the skull of somebody without operating and seeing exactly what's inside, whether it's a tumor or not a tumor. And I did invest in that company in 1978. Originally, the product was called nuclear magnetic resonance, but nobody liked the name nuclear, so we renamed it medical resonance imaging, which is the MRI. That kind of was my first real step into being an investor and an entrepreneur. That was a very successful venture. The company went public. I sold my stock, and I went on to my next. But in 1981, we were a large provider of processing for the home care industry. And one of the problems we had with that industry was you didn't know when the aid came and left the house they were supposed to be at, or if they even came. We'd be processing 40,000 home care cases. Now I'll fast forward to a patent that we had on that, for that product in the late 1990s. We patented a product called electronic visit verification. And what we did was, when the aide got to the home they were supposed to work at, they called from that location. They called our data center, so we knew what time the call came in, but we also knew, using caller ID, where they were calling from. And that became the time card. And the first year we used that in New York City, we saved the city $80 million in reimbursement, because now we only paid for when they came and when they left based upon this product. We patented the product, and that was a very successful product. In my travels in Washington, because I chair and I'm the founder of the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, I would meet these congressmen and senators for Alzheimer's. But one of the things I would tell them was, my mother had Alzheimer's, and I was always afraid the aid wouldn't show up. Well, with this product now, you know if the aid comes or not. So the congressman realized that it's an important product for not only economics, but for healthcare. So the government now mandates the use of that product under the Medicaid program. And
that company, was that
Sandata? That was Sandata, and that company got sold to private equity. And it was a very successful. But to go back, because I am an entrepreneur, I'll go back to 1981. Now we're processing for these home care cases. And one of the problems our clients had was they couldn't get the aides screened in time because they needed them to work. And in New York State, you could only work if you're screened and cleared. Height, weight, blood pressure, sexually transmitted diseases, tuberculosis, and your criminal screening. What happened there, when I saw the need for getting these aides screened quickly, I started a company called Mobile Health. And the reason it was mobile, because I had my first client I didn't need an office for, so I had a van. And the van used to go from office to office to screen the home care workers. And that started a company called Mobile Health, of which we're the largest screeners. I still own that company in the state, maybe even the country, but definitely the state. And we're screening those aides now. But it's no longer just the van. We now have offices all over the state. That's Mobile Health. But because I was in the home care industry, I saw a need for processing of drug claims that was cost effective. And since I was always in a billing business of some type, I went into what's everybody now knows as a reimbursement method. When you go to your pharmacy and you have a card, you get your drugs and you pay a copay. Well, that claim has to be filed, and we did that. And we started a company called National Medical Health Card, which was, now you refer to it as a PBM, a Prescription Benefit Manager. I started that company, which became one of the largest privately owned in the country. I then took it public and sold that to private equity.
So I mean, the path has been remarkable and remarkably successful. It seems to me that healthcare still is in the process of being digitized and computerized. Where are the biggest opportunities that you see for healthcare to become more efficient? Because now, of course, we are beginning to see physicians come visit us in the waiting room, or not in the waiting room, but come with iPads and things like that. Where is healthcare going in a broader sense?
I believe you're going to have a lot more telemedicine because the population is getting older, and one of the problems that we run in economics in this country is when the entitlement acts were created, that's Medicare and Medicaid, you had a very large base of young people supporting an apex of older people. So the supported economically worked. However, now it's the opposite. You have a smaller base of young people and a much larger base of older people. So you have to find a way to treat them medically. And so telemedicine is definitely the next step. Remembering that you have visual, you have sound. AI will be an amazing tool because through AI, you will be able to be diagnosed for things that the naked eye and the physician won't be able to. But with AI, it's unlimited. I was with a group of physicians who believe in the long run, a 100-year-old person will not be unusual. It'll be the common area because of AI. And when you think about it, if you look at an MRI or at an X-ray, your brain sees a certain thing and it has a certain capacity. Well, AI is going to see things that you can't see. They'll recognize things that the eye won't be able to determine. So healthcare is really another revolution. Every year, we're another step ahead of where we were before, and the world is changing. And you talk about vaccines being created in 2 years or 3 years. The world is on the precipice of another industrial revolution.
Now, we've spoken a bit about your business path. Tell us a little bit about your philanthropic path. What causes have you found that piqued your interest? I know that you're a Zionist. You believe in the state of Israel.
I am. I'll tell you three strong, I guess, three of my strongest charities. I'll start with one that I'm most active, that I'm very active with now, which is the IDF, the Friends of the Israeli Defense Force. And there is a program called the Impact Program that you could support a soldier who's in service for 4 years. I like that because I actually know my soldiers. I'm now on my 8th soldier, and I contact and speak with all of them. My number one soldier, Devere, was at my home 2 weeks ago when he was in this country. And it's important because they just leave their families and they go to war. And
are these lone soldiers who don't have family?
No, not even lone. No, they just have wives and families and need economic help because they're in the army and they have to leave their job. And they're not the lone soldier program. That's a different program. But I'm more active in the FIDF, in the Impact Program. And I actually stay close to I have 8 soldiers. I stay close to those 8 soldiers. I can tell you when they're getting married and when they're having babies. And so that's important to me today because what's going on, of course, in Israel and in Gaza. So
that's remarkably personal, unusual for a charity.
Well, I support, UJA, but it's almost like in a vacuum. And I know they do great things, but I really prefer to deal directly with my soldier. And I can tell you, I received a letter a while ago that I actually read at an FIDF meeting from one of my female soldiers who said, as I write this letter to you, I cry. I cry because I know now somebody in America worries about us and thinks about us. And it was a letter, the whole tenure of the letter was that way. And it wasn't that I sent the Hanukkah money. That wasn't the point. The point was I was thinking of her, which is what she said in her letter. It's heartwarming because they really, they want to know they have support, that they're not alone out there. And I was just telling my wife Muriel today that Devere is a platoon leader, a battalion leader. And he asked, they were in Gaza, could I support a barbecue for them? And I said, absolutely. So I sent them money and they had a barbecue. But then what's interesting is he called me, we actually speak, and said, I hate to ask for this, but you think you could do it for the wives of these soldiers? And I did. So they each had a barbecue. They actually sent me the video of the barbecue. They're so grateful to have outside support. Right now, we may be winning the war in Gaza, but losing the public relations war. That goes back to my theory of anti-Semitism. If you go back 2,000 years, I don't know why that the world hates the Jew. I don't know why. When we contribute so much to society, there are maybe 17 million Jews in the world out of 7 billion. We've contributed 22% of the Nobel Prize winners. Why are we so disliked? Are we that successful? Because our parents made us go to college and educated us? Is it because we work hard? I don't know why, but I'd like to meet somebody who could explain to me. But to go back to my philanthropy, I don't want to get off of it. So there are 2 major organizations. One, I started 25 years ago. It was the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. I founded it because my mom had it, and I did all the wrong things for my mother. She had it in 1970, and at the time, you didn't discuss it. You didn't talk about it. It was kind of like what they had with cancer. You never mentioned it. And I did the wrong things. I didn't know what to do. I left her in an apartment. I left her with an aide. When there are so many more and better things you could do with a patient. So I started this somewhat for research, but primarily a responsibility is to help the families deal with those families that are afflicted with this terrible disease. We actually touch 2 million people all over the country just by helping them. And the concept I had, there were a lot of individual organizations that deal locally in the individual communities. My thought was, if you could do a disc to teach somebody how to deal with an Alzheimer's patient, why should all these agencies, 1,800 of them that are under our umbrella, each do a disc? When we can do a disc once and send it to 1,800 agencies, just think of the economics and the things we could do. We actually built an apartment in New York that is meant for an Alzheimer's patient, where, as an example, the clock is digital because it's easier for an Alzheimer's patient. The bottom of the bathtub is painted blue because they have a problem with depth perception. The dresses have on the drawer what's in the drawer. So the sock drawer has a picture of a sock on that drawer. It just makes it easier for the families to deal with that patient. That's my Alzheimer's, and I'm very pleased about how that's doing. We just opened up a building in Amityville just to educate families and deal with the Alzheimer's patient can now go to art therapy, music therapy, pet therapy that never existed before. And my mother didn't have it because nobody would talk about it. Now someone else's mother will benefit by that. And it's,
what kind of, just out of curiosity, what kind of research is making progress on Alzheimer's? How close are we to a
cure? Or
a cure?
Unfortunately, we're not making a lot of progress. We find things, and they come out with drugs that have the side effects are so bad. Brain bleeds. We're not there yet. I'm hopeful that somebody will fall on a cure by looking for something different. Some of these drugs, even though that the weight loss drug now that really was meant for diabetes, maybe something like that will happen. We're not there yet. And one of the problems, and I talk to Washington about this, I go 3 times a year to raise money for research. I go to Washington, and we've been very successful. I have my senators who I go to. Sue Collins is one, and Bill Cassidy is another. They're all support what I'm trying to do. We're just not there yet. And hopefully one day we'll have it. But it's not just that. My father-in-law died of ALS, the Lou Gehrig's disease, and they have the same problem. No cure. It's 80 years, 90 years, nothing.
Well, as you say, we're an aging population, or
well, that's right. That's the problem. The problem is, people say, is there more of Alzheimer's? Only because it comes with age. So my grandmother died at 70 with it, and now 80, 90, 95. It's prevalent in the older people. And we know some of the causes. We just don't know how to either reverse it or stop it. So that's Alzheimer's Foundation. My other big charity, which I spend a lot of time on, and I just went to a very good friend's 90th birthday, Fred Gould, who introduced me to Joe Gerwin. The Gerwin Nursing Facility and Healthcare Facility is now a 540-bed nursing home and 210-bed assisted living and 130 apartment independent housing, of which I'm the chairman of the complex. And in that area, I was just mentioning it to Fred yesterday, I was introduced to Joe Gerwin by Fred Gould. And the story I tell people, and I tell it to his daughter Laura often, my very first board meeting about 27 years ago, I actually disagreed with Joe Gerwin, and I did not know that nobody on the board disagrees with Joe Gerwin. But the question came up. My suggestion was to build, we only had a nursing home, and it was 240 beds. And I suggested building an assisted living. And Joe said, no, we're a nursing home, we should stay a nursing home. And I said, can I explain to you why I think we should have assisted living? He said, yes, tell me what your theory is. I said, nursing homes are supported roughly 75 to 80% by the federal government under Medicaid and Medicare. And so we're dependent upon what they allow us to get. Assisted living is all private pay. So it kind of gives us a balance. If the government, is cutting back on reimbursements, we at least have a source of funds that's not dependent upon the federal government. And to Joe Gerwin's credit, and I have to tell you, the man is brilliant. He said, Bert, you're right. And this is not a bad idea. And we, in fact, built an assisted living called Linda. We got a grant from the Linda Foundation, and we built an assisted living. And then we expanded the Gerwin nursing home to 440 beds. But
fantastic. That was a wonderful period. Our time just flew by. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but perhaps we can do this again. But thank you for tuning into this episode of Disrupting Hate on HMTV. Many thanks to our guest, Bert Brodsky, for sharing his thoughts and his insights. Be sure to subscribe, share, and stay connected for more engaging conversations. Until next time, take care and be well.